We've taken a look at the supposedly objective post-election news reporting by the ABC. But what happens when the reporters don't have an editor looking over their work? Well, you only have to peer into the sewer, which is Twitter, to get an idea of what these journalists really think. First, let's start with 730's chief political correspondent, Laura Tingle, the ABC journalist who once wrote that Scott Morrison was guilty of, quote, ideological bastardry. Well, that same combative style of online commentary has completely disappeared now that Labor is in charge. Instead, here she is retweeting uncritically messages from Foreign Affairs Minister Penny Wong, who this week declared, quote, we will listen because we care what the Pacific has to say. Well, no analysis, just an emphatic declaration of support of empty platitudes from a journalist you pay for and is supposed to be objective. And what happens when real journalists dare to ask their dear leader tough questions? Well, a few days prior to the federal election, she was publicly shaming journalists who asked Anthony Albanese questions that he didn't like. The reporter, yes, who works at Sky News, asked Albanese for details on budget costings, and Albanese ducked and weaved as always. Well, Laura Tingle didn't like that someone who wants to run the country was asked tough questions. So she tweeted out a transcript of the exchange saying, sorry, but this is embarrassing for my profession. Well, keep in mind that this person is the chair of the National Press Club, an organisation which markets itself as proudly defending, quote, freedom of the press on its website. Well, it looks like freedom of thought only extends to those who disagree with conservative viewpoints. And back on the ABC, opinion host Paul Barry thought Tingle's Twitter comments were just brilliant.
And in the front line of the chasing pack were Nine's Jonathan Kersley and Sky's Jonathan Lee.
Isn't there a problem with transparency? We're following you for answers, Mr Albanese, and you're now just not giving them. You have to answer eventually.
It was pretty pathetic stuff. Dubious accusations, confected outrage and much ado about next to nothing. As the ABC's Laura Tingle, the current president of the Canberra Press Club, tweeted,
sorry, but this is embarrassing for my profession.
And this is why the ABC is broken beyond repair. It is infected by such a degree of groupthink that these senior taxpayer-funded personalities think it's acceptable to use their platforms to publicly shame reporters who are just doing their jobs, just trying to get information out of someone who wants to be the most powerful political position in the country. And isn't that what this is all about? Shouldn't we be applauding journalists who are not intimidated by press secretaries or their mates in office? And why does the ABC think that only it should be allowed to ask politicians tough questions? It spent a decade celebrating journalists like Louise Milligan as brave and independent when they were clearly barracking for one side of politics. When Milligan came under fire for publishing unprovable allegations of rape against Christian Porter, which cost the taxpayer, you, hundreds and thousands of dollars in legal fees, the ABC defended her as a hero. They wrote in their statement, the ABC stands by Louise Milligan, one of Australia's foremost and most awarded investigative journalists, and all of our journalists in their independent and brave reporting on matters which Australians have a right to be informed. And this election just exposed these people for what they are. Taxpayer-funded political operatives. Here is that same objective, independent, brave journalist, Louise Milligan, now bragging about the election result. In response to a tweet from Climate 200 MP, Monique Ryan, who wrote, the Liberal Party has been smashed by a sea of teal women, Milligan gleefully shared that post and wrote this. It feels like all those women who marched for justice around Australia, a phenomenon not really a focus in the campaign photo ops and froth and bubble, changed the nation last night. And who does Milligan think galvanised the women she says influenced the election? Well, herself, of course. When one Twitter user thanked Milligan for helping to, quote, burst the toxic bubble, Milligan simply responded with, thank you kindly, I just did my job. Reporting. So when ABC journalists brazenly celebrate election results and take credit for their role in the outcome, I think we have a problem in this country.